Welcome to Beatsource Tech. My name's Mojaxx and today we're taking a look at what I believe is the most expensive DJ cartridge ever produced. It's the Ortofon Concorde ELITE. 2018 was a rather momentous year in the world of DJ cartridges. Shure announced that they were discontinuing their entire range, and within a couple of weeks, Ortofon released the Mark II version of their Concorde line, which have since become the default choice for most DJs. They don't have the market entirely to themselves. G-Co have got better distribution for their products in places like the US now, and they have a bunch of really interesting new options available, some of which I'll be reviewing soon. There's also Audio-Technica, Chuden, Reloop and Nagaoka, and Abe-san from Taruya is pumping out Concorde-style carts from his Japanese workshop too, which I keep hearing good things about. But when it comes to truly mainstream choices, Danish manufacturer Ortofon pretty much own the space. And that makes sense. Their range is wide enough to cover all kinds of DJs, and the plug-and-play nature of their Concorde line means that they are a zero-fuss solution. And they don't just make all-in-ones either. They still produce some OM carts as headshell mounting options, and the VNL carts too. I realise I only ever did a first look on those when they first dropped 2 years ago, and I've been testing them ever since, so here's a quick bonus review. The VNL or vinyl is clearly aimed at turntablists and other fans of the M44-7 and has a similar blocky design. Since the initial release, they seem to have dropped the thing where they shipped with 3 different styli, all with different compliance levels, and the cartridge is now just supplied with the middle one, the number 2. They still sell the other 2 types as replacements, but I think overall this is a smart move, as the middle one will be just right for most DJs. The difference in compliance between the 3 is noticeable but not dramatic, and they all sound the same. Tracking is really excellent at the recommended 4 grams of tracking force once they're broken in, and they hold the groove superbly when scratching and back cueing. The sound profile is very forward with quite pronounced bass and mids, but there is plenty of transparency in the top end too, a lot like the M44-7 but with a little extra sparkle in the treble. There are only 2 things I'm not a fan of. The first is the output volume at 6mV. This is quite a bit lower than the 44s and a lot of Ortofon's other DJ carts. It's not crazy low, but depending on your mixer, this can make it harder to balance with digital sources or to get the cleanest signal into your DVS system. Every preamp is different though, so your mileage may vary. And the second is the stylus guards, which fall off a little bit too easily for my liking. Although, to be fair, I don't think I've ever opened up my cartridge case and found one of those floating around loose in the bottom. Ultimately, the vinyl is an easy recommendation for turntablists and for general vinyl DJing. I still prefer the Mark II Concordes myself. I find the narrower profile of the tip easier to use when queuing up my 45s, but the vinyl is durable, affordable and performs very well, so if you're looking for a headshell mounting option, it will do a great job for you. Back to the main review then, as we take a look at the new kid on the block, the Concorde ELITE. The ELITE is undoubtedly a premium cartridge, being priced at around $400 in the US. This is a lot, no doubt, but not in the hi-fi world, where the cost of cartridges can stretch into the thousands, and Ortofon are clearly applying a lot of the concepts and technology from their well-regarded hi-fi products into this cartridge. At first glance, it looks just like the other Concorde Mark II models, sharing as it does the same body design. You can even use the same replaceable finger lifts on all the different models. And in terms of specs, the ELITE is very similar indeed to the existing Concorde Mark II Club, which has become, from what I see, the standard choice for club and festival DJs who play techno, house and disco on vinyl. But there is a lot more to the ELITE than meets the eye. We'll start with the stylus itself, which is a nude elliptical type. This means that rather than having a diamond tip bonded to a metal shank, as is typical with most cartridges, the whole tip is one piece of diamond. This lowers the moving mass of the stylus and therefore allows it to follow the oscillations in the groove more accurately. I will note that this isn't the first nude stylus we've seen in the DJ space. G-Co beat Ortofon to market with one by a few months. To go with the nude stylus, Ortofon have developed a new aluminium magnesium cantilever, the arm the stylus sits on. This is a rigid 750 micrometer design created exclusively for the ELITE, and they've developed a new coil system inside the cart to match, which delivers a decently loud 8.5mV output, and they're using a new rubber compound for the suspension, which is intended to damp excessive brightness. By the way, that gold colour on the stylus body, yeah, that's real gold. 23 karat gold electroplating to be precise. Does that make any difference to the sound? No, but it sure is fancy. Looking at the specs, there are some important takeaways. I already mentioned the 8.5mV output, which is a touch higher than the Concorde Club's 8mV. As with the Club, the recommended tracking force is 3 grams, and the frequency response is the same at 20 to 20,000 kHz. And that's what's interesting about the Elite when compared side by side with the Club, the closest existing Concorde cartridge. On paper, the specs are very similar, and when looking at spectrum analysis, the frequency response is pretty close too. So why then would someone spend more than twice the price of a Club to get the Elite? Well, it comes down to the changes I outlined earlier, with the new stylus, the new cantilever and suspension. What you get with the Elite is a definite increase in the level of detail, especially in the higher frequencies. As good as the Club is, there is simply more transparency in the treble on the Elite, with things like hi-hats being more clearly defined in the mix. It's also not lacking in the low end with a lot of warmth and kick, but that remains tightly controlled, with that extra resolution impacting the sound from top to bottom. I don't expect you to take my word for it. I've recorded the same track, one of Smooth's multi-track reworks, with both the Club and the Elite, and I'll make those files available for as long as possible in the description and comments below this video. I think most of you will be able to discern the difference quite clearly. They were recorded with a Technics SL1200 M7L into a Native Instruments Complete Audio 4 via a Range 72 Mark II with a Master Sounds vinyl weight. I also did a bunch of comparative tests with other Ortofon carts and a bunch from other brands, and I can say for sure that the level of detail coming from the Elite did outshine everything else I tried. What I didn't do was test it against any hi-fi cartridges, and that's for good reason. The Elite is a DJ cartridge, not a hi-fi one, and being designed as it is for DJing, that means it will hold up to the rigors of DJ life. It's not for turntablists, of course. Elliptical as opposed to spherical styli are never a good idea for scratching and must not be used with straight tone arms as found on Vestax turntables at all, but it does track very well, certainly as well as the Club, and although Ortofon caution Elite users against heavy back queuing, once I'd got the recordings out of the way, I used it just as I would a regular DJ cart, and it has held up just fine. Plus that loud output means you can get a healthy volume level on the vast majority of DJ mixers without cranking your gains too hard. So if you're looking for someone to compare the Elite with hi-fi carts, I'm afraid you'll have to look elsewhere. I won't ever recommend using a hi-fi cart for DJing. Listening, sure, but I need to have confidence that an average DJ can use a product in a high-pressure environment without it dying on them, and the Elite gives me that confidence. A quick note on spherical versus elliptical styli. A spherical stylus will generally offer lower surface noise with older or worn records, and that is why I stick to spherical for my 45s. When it comes to record wear, it's a hotly debated topic, but I think the general consensus is that elliptical styli cause less record wear during playback, but more than spherical options when queuing or scratching. So which works best for you will depend on what and how you play. Are there any objective downsides to the Elite? Well, yes, the price. With the already excellent Concorde Mark II Club coming in at around $180 per cart in the US, you'd have to be incredibly devoted to getting the very best sound quality to be able to justify the price difference. But of course, those DJs are out there, and if you've spent 10k plus on the rest of your setup, what's an extra $800 for carts? In the end, they are the best sounding DJ cartridges I've ever used, and if you want the finest sound you can get without using a cartridge which you have to worry about breaking every time you queue up a record, then a pair of Elites will be an excellent, if pricey, investment. So there you go, my thoughts on the Ortofon Concorde ELITE. I hate to do the old cliche, but I'm gonna do it. It's a great product, definitely not for everyone. It just isn't, right? You know, it's very expensive. Okay, now when you look at the pricing, it's a lot for a DJ cartridge. It really is, like the most expensive ever made as far as I'm aware. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. But if you kind of take a sideways step and look at the audiophile world, the hi-fi scene, actually it's kind of barely scratching the surface of what you can pay for a cartridge. And it has a lot of kind of audiophile technology in there, the design, the build, the craftsmanship. It does feel a lot like a hi-fi product in many ways. But here's the crucial thing. It is still a DJ cartridge. It's not a hi-fi cartridge rebadged for DJs. It's a DJ cartridge. It tracks at 3 grams and it tracks very, very well. I wouldn't recommend that you use it if you're a full-on turntablist for scratching 4 hours a day. Probably not the best use of it, but it does track very well. It has a loud output. You're going to be able to balance it with media players and digital sources when you're in a mix. So all of that I really like, because I cannot and will not recommend hi-fi cartridges for DJing. I just won't do it, because for me, DJing should be a comfortable thing that you do. It should be somewhere where you can, I can queue up a record and not worry that I'm going to snap the cantilever on this very expensive hi-fi cart. And if sound quality is paramount for you above all else, I'm sure there are lots of other great hi-fi options that you can choose from, but they won't track like the Elite. They won't have the output of the Elite. And so for me, that's what makes the Elite an absolute winner. It's not the one for everyone. It is not even the one for me, really. In the range, I still prefer the digital. That's my favorite because I play crusty old 45s and I kind of, it's messy and everything else, right? So for me, the digital is still my favorite of the range, but there is a certain demographic of DJs for whom I think the Elite could well be the ultimate cartridge. In the comments this week, I'd love to hear from you guys and girls on one topic. I'd just love to know, what cartridges are you using? It's 2022. Some brands have been and gone. The whole market has shifted. The whole market has changed. So if you do play vinyl with your turntables, which cartridges are you using? Just let me know because I'd love to hear it. Thank you for watching this episode of Beatsource Tech. I do hope you've enjoyed it or found it useful. If you have, please give the video that thumbs up and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. I'll see you next time.